Well, hello there. My name is Nicola Connolly Byrne. I am the personal empowerment specialist, and you are very welcome to my podcast, Soulchats. We normally speak here about people's personal and spiritual development and how they have empowered themselves to do that. But this time, we are shifting gears and we're going to speak about health empowerment and all things perimenopause, menopause, and HRT. I have some amazing guests lined up for you who are going to share their stories about their personal journey and knowledge around HRT or the lack of it. Please bear in mind, we are not medical professionals, so we are not offering medical advice. We just believe in the power of shared learning, so please do speak to a doctor if you feel like you need to. So let's jump right into new territory. Let's get going and buckle your seatbelts. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm really good. Thank you so much for giving me your time. It's a pleasure to meet you.
It's a pleasure to meet you too. Thanks for having me.
Not at all. It's my pleasure. Let me just read out to my listeners exactly who and what you are. This is Tom Coleman. He's a sleep coach and qualified health scientist who has spent over a decade working with people in helping them improve their health. Is that a fair?
That's fair.
Of you, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a passionate health advocate. I have been described as many things, but I am passionate about helping people with their health.
And why is that, Tom?
The several, I suppose I was always very curious about health and about the body and the mind and how it worked. And that really drove me to go back to college because when I finished school, I jetted off to London and I worked there for a few years, came back, done various things, but I always had this kind of burning kind of desire to learn.
Okay.
I couldn't wait to get out of school.
Yeah.
So I said I'm going to go back into education, and I found a degree in health science. So I was like, okay, this gives me a good broad picture.
So you were already in a different industry.
Oh yeah, I mean, I had done several different. I worked in an office for 5 years in London.
Okay.
I worked construction jobs. I had a cleaning company. I'd done a lot of different things.
I love it.
I counted up actually at one time all the different jobs over my life, and it was about 15 or 16 different.
You're like me, Tom. You're a mongrel.
Yeah, I mean, like people say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I'm like, I'm still not sure, you know. But
I know.
So
you
had that curiosity, and you know, a thing that happened. My dad died when he was 62. He died pretty young.
And what age were you at the time, Tom?
I was 27. And
that's very young, Tom, to lose your dad. I'm so sorry to hear that.
Thank you. Like it was preventable, you know.
Okay.
I was in the middle of college as well.
Oh, so you were studying that?
That's what I was kind of studying, you know. And you know, that was definitely a driving force as well.
And can I ask, Tom, what your father passed from?
He had atherosclerosis, so basically all his arteries and veins were blocked up. He was really strong. I mean, he was super strong. He was super active. He was overweight. He liked his food or whatever. A little bit, not excessively. He had given up smoking. He didn't drink. So he was, I mean, you know, and then suddenly, boom, just suddenly. So like, you know, it could have been prevented was the thing.
Okay.
So that is certainly a driving force for me.
Yeah.
Still today, and he was a huge influence in my life. So I came into the world of sleep. I didn't dream to be a sleep specialist or a sleep coach.
Yeah, so this is the piece I'm interested in, Tom. I can't wait to get into this with you now. What drew you to that particular thing? There has to have been an instance where
it was a question, because what happened was I left college. I worked with Special Olympics. I traveled the world. I lived in South America. Finally came back to Ireland. Thought, right, I'm really interested in nutrition. I love food. So I set up a nutritional consultancy business and started working with different groups, different people to make healthy food simple. and easy, and done cookery demos and talked about nutrition and stuff. So that was my work life began there, really. And through working with elite athletes, I kind of figured out that, you know, from the period they finish training to when they come back on the training pitch, it's what coaches say. That's what really makes the difference.
Yes.
Okay? So their goal there is optimize recovery. So I became obsessed with, how can I optimize recovery? What are the different things that feed into that? So that was the question. What's the magic bullet? People think nutrition is, and it is, but I wanted something more, you know. And that's when I think I listened to a podcast and I heard this guy from the Australian Institute of Sport speaking about sleep, and it just, oh my God, it just lit me up. Like, I was like, wow, that was amazing. And I started digging into sleep, and I contacted a company in America who they have utilized technology designed by the US military for fighter pilots to measure sleep and mental fatigue and the correlation. Wow. And I contacted them and I said, can you send me some of your units? They were about €1,000 each at the time. I didn't have any money. And I had been working with Irish rugby union players. I had been in speaking in John Kavanagh's gym in Dublin. So that was Conor McGregor's coach. So I kind of threw them that and said, look, I'm working with these big names and whatever. And they sent me over the tech.
Oh, wow.
And they sent me over 5 units and said, okay. And basically then I got to analyze, you know, sleep patterns and fatigue of some very well-known rugby players. Yeah. And Conor McGregor. And that's kind of, you know, it's continued over the years. The fire within me is still there for sleep. I love it. I was dragged into the corporate world about 6 or 7 years ago.
Dragged.
So they were crying out for help, you know.
Yeah.
Shift workers. I mean, all the shift workers. Think about. I mean, we have a subculture, a society that's keeping our coffee hot and our croissants and
absolutely
everything else. And they were crying. They were struggling with sleep. So I delved into that area, and I was involved in research in Ireland in 2018. I was on an expert panel with a few other people. One of them being Russell Foster, who's the head of neuroscience or Oxford University.
Brilliant.
He was one of my heroes. It was one of my kind of guys I used to watch all the time. So
you
know, that's the journey. And I've worked with sports people. I've worked with mums who are struggling. I've worked with menopausal women. The only kind of cohort I don't really work with is children, because that's just a whole special, you know.
It's that's another kettle of fish. Yeah. So I suppose my listeners would be very, very interested in how you either fell into or were dragged into dealing with women who were perimenopausal or menopausal. How did you get into that arena?
Well, I remember doing talks in the corporate sector, and I remember, and actually the amazing thing was, men I would say any questions at the end, and then remember this guy put up his hand. He's like, my wife struggling with sleep and she's menopausal and whatever. And I wasn't aware at that point of the huge disruption, you know. And I said, well, I gave him a little bit of advice, but I said, I'm not on point with the topic. So I said, let me come back to you, you know. So I started looking it up, you know, and then I was like, wow, these women are struggling with sleep, and this is the reason, you know. And shortly after that, I was doing the bio talks with Avian Garrity and stuff, and that's, you know, 99% women nearly. And I started talking about it there. Yeah. And I remember one talk, you know, I talked about the vasomotor symptoms and different things you could do and everything else. And any questions at the end? And this one lady said, you know, I've come to a lot of these talks before, and I've heard, and I've seen, who's going talking about sleep? Sure, it's a man. Sure, what would he know about menopause?
Oh, and really?
Yeah. And she said, you talked about it, and I'm so delighted. She was thrilled, and everyone.
Isn't that brilliant?
Cracked up laughing. I got a standing ovation. I was like, oh my God. I mean, that was just incredible. Yeah. And then I was kind of pushing for it. I was speaking about it, and I connected with people like Catherine O'Keefe, and we done some work together on it. And, you know, I've learned a little bit more about it, and you know, that's how I start. And I'd say, like, some of the clients I work with, good portion of them are in that category. They're perimenopausal or menopausal.
Okay, so I want to just drill down now to my audience and what they will be thinking at this point. So I did a couple of live streams last month that literally made Facebook explode, because I spoke about my journey. And like, up until say a year and a half ago, I hadn't even heard of the word perimenopause. Like, I hadn't heard it at all. I'd heard about menopause, but I felt like it was going to be really, really far down the road for me.
Yeah.
And I started to experience some symptoms, but I wasn't aware that they were symptoms at the time, because they all didn't arrive at the door at one stage. They all came at different points.
Yes.
Now, retrospectively, I can see that the sleep disturbance was part of the start of perimenopause for me. So I'm going to describe to you what used to happen to me, and then maybe you can give some advice around that to people who maybe are unsure whether they're in perimenopause. Okay. So when I was younger, like when I was a child, I used to struggle with sleep, but that was for a different reason. Then I got myself into a wonderful pattern where I would be out cold in seconds.
Yeah.
You know, I have a good, healthy lifestyle. I do daily spiritual practice. I meditate, all those things. Lovely. So I have many, many years of lovely sleep. Unless my husband snores and wakes me up, of course. But and then he just gets a dig, and then it's all over for him. But in the last number of years, I was waking up in and around the same time every night. And then a pattern emerged, and then it was happening every single night.
Yeah.
And I'd get up I would be arguing with myself to try and get back asleep, and I'm counting down the hours, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm up in 3 hours, and you know, I'm going to have 3 hours less sleep or 4 hours less sleep sometimes, which is a lot of hours. And then sometimes I wouldn't be able to go back asleep. Then I'm exhausted during the day, and then the dysfunctional cycle starts.
Yeah.
But then what started to happen was I would start to get panicked before I was going to sleep.
Yeah.
I would start to get stressed. I wonder, is tonight going to be the same as last night? And then I had this preemptive, you know, focusing into the future of what my sleep was going to be like. So before sleep was stressful, when I woke up, it was stressful, and I was walking around exhausted. Tom, speak to the women. Speak to them.
Yeah, it's a very typical pattern, really. Like, sleep is a very complex thing. There's not one area of the brain that controls your sleep. There's one area of your brain which controls the timing mechanism, but sleep itself comes in waves across the brain, in the brain stem, right? Now, it is a delicate thing. And what happens is there's several things that happen. So kind of let me describe, and then I'll walk through what you've described. So
yeah.
Sleep varies through the lifespan. The requirement for sleep varies through the lifespan. Obviously, children require a lot more. There's great variance in that. Teenagers, etc., they require a lot more as well. Adults, there's a kind of general kind of 7 to 8 hours. Generally, for most of us, that's sufficient. And you went through that phase of you were getting kind of regular, consistent sleep, and you don't even think about it. You just go to bed and it happens, right?
Yeah, it was just an is. I only ever thought about it when it wasn't there anymore.
That's the only time you do. The only time you give it a lot of consideration is when you're exhausted. You know, oh my God, or when you wake up, or you're like, oh, I'm so tired, I want to go to bed here. You promise yourself, or whatever it may be. But as we age, our sleep naturally gets lighter. Okay, so there's so many different cycles to talk about, isn't there? Especially when it comes to females, you know. And you know, over the course of the night, we sleep in 90-minute cycles. And each cycle differs. Your first couple of cycles, you will spend a lot more time in deep sleep. And then as each cycle continues, you spend a lot more time in lighter sleep.
Okay.
REM sleep. Okay, for different reasons. So we can say that as the night progresses, your sleep is getting lighter. As you age, your sleep gets lighter also. So sleep is about percentages. These things kind of start feeding into each other. Okay. And then what happened to you is you started experiencing wake episodes. Now, wake episodes occur for both men and women. they tend to increase as we age for those reasons, and we become less efficient at the process of sleep, right? Then what happens is inadvertently it becomes a pattern, because the brain loves patterns and responds that way. Like over the weekend, you cannot sleep in on a Saturday and instruct your brain to stay asleep for another hour and a half on Saturday, right? It just wakes up at the same time. So that's what started to happen, and then the dysfunction from that, you know, it impacts everything. Your mood, how you interact, your frame of mind, how you view the world. And that's because you're missing out on that psychological repair. And that's that reset. Because when you sleep during REM sleep, what happens is your brain embeds positive emotional experience.
I like the way you said that. Psychological repair.
Yeah.
That sings to my soul there now.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I mean, it does literally change how you view the world. Because if you've had a stressful event throughout the day, what your brain does at night, sleep on it and see how you feel in the morning, right? What happens is your brain disassociates the emotion from the event and files it away.
Wow.
So you've embedded positive stuff and you've got rid of the stressful stuff. So literally the next day, you're kind of reset the next day from an emotional, a psychological point of view.
It's like what tech support says, turn it on and off again.
Yeah. But if you do turn on and off the computer, you shut things down, the computer does a little repair, it gets rid of the memory stuff in the short term, it clears that. And that's what's happening when you sleep. Now, the pattern is exactly how you've just described. So the dysfunction, the tiredness, oh my God, you hang on, and then what starts happening, if that occurs a few times, what I've coined a phrase that sleep confidence, right? So your sleep confidence starts to drop, and then you start getting anxious and worried about, will I be able to sleep? A few hours before bed, thinking, okay, I really need sleep tonight because I'm exhausted. I have to get it. And the focus becomes on getting the sleep. And the anxiety, of course, is going to raise cortisol levels in your bloodstream. It's going to adrenaline. It's going to cause this chemical disruption, and your nervous system is agitated as well. So, I mean, if we have stress and anxiety, the same systems that control stress control sleep. Exactly.
Really?
Exactly the same systems. Yeah.
That's my next question.
So if you're in this agitated state and you're worried, and so you have physical, chemical, and psychological things built up now that will obstruct your sleep. Okay. You may fall asleep from complete exhaustion, but often then the brain wakes you up because you haven't dealt with something. You haven't completely calmed down, deactivated, and everything else. So that can happen. And then what you've also described there is the typical kind of perimenopause thing. It creeps up. It creeps up on us. It's not as though one day or one night it just all suddenly stopped working. No, it creeps up, and it's that 1% or 2% that now is kind of nearly the norm, that you function and you don't notice it. So the next week it's another 1%, and that is and then before you know it, you're kind of in this kind of state of anxiousness and fear and anxiety and everything else. And that's what women describe to me, and unsure about things. So there are things that you can do. The first reassurance I want to give people about wake up episode is that it is normal.
Okay, that's great.
It's absolutely part of your, we don't call it sleep because it's not one continuous event. It was for some people, but what happens is most of us do wake up and fall back asleep, and we don't remember because we don't need to. Okay, and it's quite normal that people wake up, especially as they age. Okay, but of course the focus becomes immediately, I have to get back to sleep. You check the time, and I know, and I say this often, people kind of go, oh, I'm awake again. Oh no, what time is it?
Yes. How many more minutes do I have?
Yeah, and they do the calculation, so they get blinded by the light of the phone. They do the calculation and go, okay, I have to get back to sleep because I have to get up, and so I kind of say, look, your job isn't to fall back asleep. Let's shift the focus away from sleep. Your job is to relax as much as possible. You have a strategy for that. Now, there are very real physical symptoms that happen. in perimenopause and menopause. So things like progesterone and estrogen just fall off a cliff. And I can talk about the function of those and how they interact a bit later. But there is a lot of hope there for people who experience this. And what sleep is about is kind of moving any obstacles in the way and allowing sleep to happen. It's letting go. I think about sleep as letting go of the day, letting go of worries, fears, dreams. You can do it tomorrow, but it's about kind of calming everything down and moving out of the way, and then allowing sleep to come in waves, and for you to go with that, be the observer.
Okay.
Not to be. Of course, there's fear and anxiety about it, and you nearly want to welcome that and go, okay. It's like anxiety. You go, okay, I acknowledge that. I welcome that in, but when you're like going, oh, to get back it's difficult. I like the words I use, because the other side of sleep that I seen was when we had a baby, and he was he was a poor sleeper. And I say to people, my son was heading up a sleep deprivation project for a number of months, but eventually, he's come round, and he's a delicate sleeper, and he doesn't need much and things like that. But the words desperation, despair come into my mind.
Yes.
If I have him and he's awake at 4 o'clock and he won't go back to sleep,
it's torturous, Tom.
It's just, why do you think that every army in the world, the first thing they do is sleep deprivation? And
oh God, yeah.
It strips you. It's the fastest way to break a human down.
Yeah. Agreed. So tell me this. I would say, like my kids would say to me, if I've had a very stressful day or a couple of stressful days and I'm very, very tired, I always say to my kids, I always gift myself with extra sleep, and a nana nap, as I would call it, during the day.
Yeah.
If I get really stressed, because I just feel like I have this high stress thing that's happening, and then I just need to boom, shut down.
Yeah.
What's your opinion around that, Tom?
Yeah, your cortisol levels will be elevated. You will have activated at some degree that kind of fight or flight. The sympathetic nervous system will be activated. So recognition of that is excellent, and then calming it down. And in order to do that, sleep is a great way to bring that down. If you can get a nap, or it resets everything. It gives us a kind of a reset. Now, when you nap and the duration of your nap are important, that you don't go over maybe half an hour if it's a short nap, 25, 26 minutes, ideal, great. NASA have researched that, by the way.
Brilliant.
Or you do a full 90-minute cycle, which may not be the best thing, maybe if you're having to go to bed a few hours later. It will sleep pressure. So I'm
organically doing the right thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely, you are. And it's tough because you sometimes have to go against your feelings. It's not always about but you're actually doing the right thing there, of having a little nap, doing a little reset, and you're back and ready. So
okay. You spoke there about progesterone and estrogen.
Yeah.
And that and testosterone are the three things that I've been researching every single day, I suppose, for the last 2 years. Tell us your knowledge around that with regard to sleep.
So basically, from a physical perspective, all the repair, the reset, the refunctioning, and the balancing happens, of course, primarily with that kind of stuff in the first half of the night. So all the tissue repair, the muscle repair, scar healing, all that's happening. I'd say vast majority of that over the 24 hours happening at night. Your immune system regulates itself, so we know that inflammation is mediated, because we don't want it to be eliminated or to be overactive, your immune response. So your inflammation is mediated. We make a lot of immune cells. We restock at night while we sleep. That's when those things are made. And then your endocrine system, so your hormones, so things like testosterone, like you said, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, ghrelin, the hunger hormone, leptin, which tells you to stop eating. All of those, we can go through them all. They all balance out. Now, if you don't get sufficient sleep, it disrupts. So, I know for the sex hormones, testosterone drops off a cliff if you get less than 5 hours. So for men, my level would be that of a man 10 years older if I don't get sufficient sleep.
Okay.
Pretty quick. Comes up pretty quick as well. But so in terms of perimenopause and menopause, estrogen and progesterone, and women, like you said, quite correctly, women produce testosterone, men have estrogen.
Yes. And not all women know that. I didn't know this.
Yeah. Not all, yeah. So like everything is kind of impacted. Now with menopause, both kind of fall off a cliff. And if we look at, say, progesterone, it has a key role in relaxation. Progesterone helps regulate breathing as well.
Wow, didn't know that.
Well, it's incredible. Relaxation is necessary for sleep. So progesterone gets taken out of that equation. And then that's where, you're getting that kind of anxiousness and anxiety and stuff that you don't realize is kind of creeping upon you, because progesterone isn't coming in and relaxing you and calming you and things like that. So all of your hormones are being balanced at night, and then you're not getting that, and the levels just fall off a cliff. And the multiple role, like most neurotransmitters and hormones, they have multiple roles, or their role impacts on multiple systems in the body, from heart rate to breathing to respiration to brain, all aspects. So you're missing out big time, and that's a lot of the kind of issue with the hormones and how they impact your ability to fall asleep and stay asleep as well. Okay.
And that's where HRT, like the progesterone HRT, is going to be useful to women to be able to aid sleep.
Yes, absolutely. So it's not always possible. It's not always an option for women.
Yes.
Go and discuss with your GP.
Yes, for sure.
Kind of experts in that area. There are certain things that you can take that will kind of lessen the impact, maybe. So things like phytoestrogens. So we find phytoestrogens in nutritious whole foods, in nuts and seeds. You can go to the chemist and buy phyto meaning plant estrogen. So what they do is we take
plant-based estrogen.
Yeah, they bind to estrogen receptors and they give the downstream effect, but they don't increase estrogen in the body. So it's kind of to let people know, because some women, maybe they have an imbalance there, maybe they're estrogen dominant or whatever. So phytoestrogen, like taking foods that are rich in phytoestrogens and anti-inflammatories, is a good strategy and will maybe help with things like relaxation.
Yes, I want to go back to what you literally just said there a second ago. You mentioned it just a few moments ago about the connection between, and I'm doing a lot of research around this at the moment, the connection between inflammation and your immune system.
Yeah, so inflammation, when the body is damaged in any way, a few things happen. The body recognizes the damage and it basically tries to repair itself. Your body's always trying to repair itself, right? It's a self-healing mechanism, right? So what happens if there's any type of damage in any system or anything else is it's a 3-stage process. And the first stage of that is inflammation. And the goal of inflammation is to isolate the area. Like if you have a burn or an infection in your hand, it gets red, it swells up.
Yes.
It gets sensitive. It's basically a signal to kind of protect that area. Don't bang it, don't move it. Like if you bang your knee, it swells up to stop you moving it. That's inflammation. And then it's remodeling and rebuilding and repair. So there's kind of 3 stages. Now we want an appropriate response when it comes to inflammation. Inflammation is the cause of about 65% of chronic disease in the world.
Yes.
So we look at heart disease, the #1 killer in Ireland, the UK, US, and all the developed nations. The root cause really is inflammation, because if your arteries become damaged, we damage the endothelial lining. We have a single cell lining in all of our arteries. That's damaged. The body then recognizes that and patches it up with cholesterol.
Yes.
Calcifies, and then that breaks off. It can go to the brain and cause stroke. It can block the coronary arteries. It can cause heart attack.
Yes.
So inflammation, diabetes, stroke, cardiovascular disease, all of these things are inflammatory. Things like asthma, arthritis. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Yes.
So inflammation is necessary, but if we are in a state of systemic inflammation, and there was a great bit of research that came out some years ago on obesity, and it said that about 70% in 70% of the cases that was down to inflammation. If the body is in a state is inflamed, if we've chronic inflammation, the body then stores all the energy as fat. And that's what's happening. So it's really important that we recognize that, and during sleep inflammation is mediated. So we know that after sleep, inflammatory cytokines. So how do I know if you're inflamed? There's a certain number of inflammatory proteins floating around in your blood. So after sleep, that number drops down at a manageable level.
Okay, yeah. So it's really important to, because you know the movie Heal. Have you ever watched the movie Heal?
I haven't, no. I'll put it down on the list.
Oh, Tom, I'm telling you, you're in for a treat there. And they speak a lot about inflammation in that movie. I think I've watched that movie 20 times at this stage. I just constantly take notes. It's phenomenal. But yeah, observing the ways in which inflammation is entering your body is I suppose, the most important thing to do.
Yes.
As a preventative measure. So, next question for you. You mentioned there leptin.
Yeah.
I've always had a very healthy relationship with leptin.
Good.
Not everybody does.
Yeah.
Because people tend to numb themselves in many ways, but lots of ways. Like one of the main ways in which people would numb themselves is the most socially acceptable, which is through food.
Yeah.
So speak to us about the correlation between, women, food, leptin. How can we have a stronger relationship with leptin?
Well, it's a really good point. We have to look at our relationship with food and realize that, what it's driven by. And, like we have two reward pathways in the brain, which are exceptionally powerful. And the function of those reward pathways is that we survive as humans.
Yes.
We're tied up with food, sex, drugs, love, bond, they're really powerful.
Belonging.
Seeking, desire, pleasure. Oh my God, talk about power, right? So food, we get a signal from ghrelin. Ghrelin is a chemical made in the stomach that signals, hey, we need some calories, eat. So that's one mechanism. Now there are many mechanisms, that's just one. And we go and eat, but do we just keep eating? What tells us to stop eating? Well, a few things. Receptors at the top of the stomach, but there's a delay in that as well. Leptin is what tells you to stop eating. It's a powerful hormone. It's produced by adipose tissue or fat, right? So you would think that the more fat stores that you have, the more that would tell you to don't need to eat now. We have a reserve of energy here. But people can become leptin resistant.
Really?
Yes.
And I did not know that.
Yes. That is why you think, well, wait a minute, I've got 20 kilos of fat here. I should be producing tons of leptin. Well, you are. But we become leptin resistant the same as we become insulin resistant. And that's why.
How do we become leptin resistant?
Oh, well, you're delving into cellular stuff now. When you it's the same way. It's everything is gummed up and it just doesn't function as well. There's a kind of lock and key mechanism, and it just can't activate the leptin.
So this is nothing to do with our subconscious or inner child speaking to us when we were at the dinner table when we were younger, where our mothers and fathers would say, you better clear that plate.
Yeah. Or see, food is so powerful because psychological, cultural, social, religious.
Think about all the children.
Yeah, think about all the starving. I said that to my son the weekend.
And then you caught yourself and went, what am I thinking?
Yeah. But so we feel bad. So we get pleasure when we eat food. It's a very gratifying experience. We eat high sugar, high fat foods. That lights up our brain like a Christmas tree, and we get loads of dopamine. So dopamine, oh, fantastic, great stuff. We get serotonin, makes us feel good. We get these two chemicals, and that gives us a hit. And then the brain recognizes that. The brain goes, well, that felt good. So what dopamine does is make you get more dopamine.
Yes.
As a caveman or woman, if you ate, see, we have these rapid reward pathways for a reason. That if we're walking past a huge food source, such as, say, a hive of honey, and we try some and we continue walking, and it takes 3 hours for that chemical to say that was good. No. We get it, boom, straight away.
Straight away.
Rapid reward. So
and even sometimes, Tom, before we put the food in our mouths, because we can smell it, it's a sensory experience.
You get 2 spikes of dopamine. Think about walking along in the desert, you're starving, you've no water, and then suddenly you see a green oasis. Boom, you get this massive surge of energy, excitement. Yeah, that's the first hit. The second hit comes when you have the food. Right? So you get 2 hits. You get 2 hits, you get 2 spikes. If the expectation is met. If it's not, if the food isn't as good as you thought it would be, the spike isn't as big. If it's better, it's even bigger, right? So those are powerful. So what the brain does is it hijacks that feeling. So if you're sitting on the couch and you have a report to do, your work to do, you're like, oh God, I don't want to do that. Or if you have a bad feeling, feel bad, your brain goes, oh, I know, have a Mars bar. You feel better. And you go, oh, comfort.
Yes, you go the easy route.
I want the good feeling, or I want to get away from the bad feeling. So that's what happens.
Yeah.
So, they're, as I said, they're very powerful,
It sounds like what we're describing here is a theory that I developed years ago called the titanium plate.
Right.
And how we're all born with a titanium plate in our chests, and through life experience, our titanium plate becomes damaged. And how we repair the damage of our titanium plate is all the pleasurable experiences that we have externally from the outside in.
Yeah.
And the most socially acceptable way of doing that is through food.
Yeah, food, alcohol, yeah, these are absolutely
gambling, pornography, shopping.
Yeah, and I describe all those as cheap dopamine.
Yeah,
they're all cheap dopamine. And
yeah,
I quote my dad here, because this is what he used to say to me when I was younger. He'd say, "I'm not worried about the problem you have. I'm worried about the solution you're going to apply."
Oh, your dad is very clever.
Oh, he was he was probably the cleverest man I knew. He was very astute, very intelligent, very sharp, very compassionate.
Yeah, my heart just got bigger there when you said that.
Yeah. So, it's life will throw challenges at us all. We all have trauma. Life is,
we do.
I think the first line of the first noble truth of Buddhism is that life is suffering. You can't avoid it. Even in avoiding suffering, you're suffering. So, like, life will happen. But what's your response? What's your, like you said it there with our arbor, what are you going to do to heal that?
Yeah.
You're healing that is drinking half a bottle of whiskey, and not a good solution.
Yes.
If it's eating 2 chocolate cakes every time someone says something to you that you don't like. So,
yes.
Yeah,
I do. I have to say, I love the titanium plate theory and how we go about fixing it correctly, how we go about filling the holes in our titanium plate from the inside out. That's really important. Okay, Tom. So what are the key things that you would say to my listeners for them to know that there is a solution to this problem with regard to sleep?
I've spent 10 years working with people. It becomes like a huge mountain for people. And they just go, this is the way it is now, and it's torturous. Through guiding people through the different things that we can do, such as there are physiological mechanisms and levers that we can change in our life. Because what informs your sleep is every single thing you do from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep. And we can align and adjust every aspect of that. There's about 20 different levers and 20 different things we can do that will help with that. Not to mention the kind of reframing of how we deal with the problem. Yeah. In a very real way, we can improve. We can get a little bit of control back. We can start to get results. We tend to focus in on the today or tomorrow, but we kind of zoom out of it and go. It's never a straight line journey.
No.
Up and down. But overall, if we zoom out, we're helping. Like, I've helped people who've had sleep issues for 20, 30 years, and they're stuck in that rhythm. But like, it's about being open to new solutions. It's about, I have a structured 12-week program, for example, I put people through. So move the focus off sleep now. That's my job. Your job is to focus on these things.
Yes.
You start to implement. You're not responsible for the results. You're only responsible for taking the actions. So there are real physical things you can do, like, you know, the phytoestrogens, like your physical activity, like light exposure, monitoring where you are. What I mean by that is your nervous system, how aroused are you at different times of the day, and things like that. So there are a lot of things that you can do. And you know, I think the first thing is kind of the recognition and the understanding of what's going on. You know, like you said it there, Nicola, it's like you didn't even know what was going on. So
yeah, I didn't.
You know, this gives relief straight away. That's normal. You know, even to say to people that waking up is completely normal. And you know that there is so much you can do to get back control and improve your sleep. Like, sleep is not about fixing. Rarely, very rarely. It's about management. It's about looking at all the, because the problems tend to be multifaceted.
Yes.
And it's about kind of stepping back and tackling those one at a time and realigning, and then having a little bit of patience, and then you watch the sleep start to improve, because you're retraining systems. The brain will find a way. You're retraining systems, you're calming down systems, you're moving obstacles out of the way, and the sleep gradually then starts to come.
Yes, comes nearer to you.
Yeah.
So there is hope.
Oh, absolutely.
There is hope. And I don't use the word hope very often, because I think hope can be a bit of a flimsy word and you're handing your power over to the nothing. But what hope stands for me, is have objectives, plan and execute.
Oh, I love it. Have objectives, plan and execute. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, you can have that one, Tom.
Thank you. We've swapped. That's great. We've swapped some.
Okay, so we want the women to know that there are solutions.
Yeah.
They don't always have to be down the HRT route. There's other things that you can do.
Exactly.
And then there's some women out there that are contacting me that are told that they cannot take HRT.
Yeah.
So we need to be able to provide solutions for those women too, Tom.
Yeah.
So how can we get in touch with you? How can our listeners get in touch with you if they are being told that they can't take HRT for whatever reason? But also, I just want to put a little yellow flag in that I'm not a medical doctor and I'm not giving medical advice.
Yeah.
However, some doctors are not educated enough around HRT, and I would always go for second opinion, and always have yourself well armed with information before you go in and ask any doctor any questions, especially around HRT. But if women find themselves in a position where they cannot take HRT for medical reasons and medical reasons only, they can contact the likes of you, Tom.
They can. I believe there's a huge, there's a gaping hole there, and my heart goes out to the doctors in you know, if a person goes to a doctor for these reasons, you know, struggling with menopause and sleep issues, and you know, they sometimes they have a couple of routes. They do the medication route, or they do a sleep study route, or you know, antihistamine or things like this. And not really, like, there's much more that can be done, and that's where people like me come in. I mean, there's a waiting list for, say, sleep. There's a waiting list for 1 to 2 years to see a sleep specialist. So like, what do those people do? Just hang on for a couple of years, you know. So there is,
and then they hang on, and then they're doing more physical damage to their bodies.
Yeah, and that's what happens. So like, people do reach out to me. People can easily contact me. I have a process of working with people. I always jump on a call with them, which is free of charge. Getting an appointment with me is tricky, because I do tend to be booked up with appointments and check-ins and things like that. So if I work with someone, if I decide to take on someone as a client, I know I can help them. Like, I don't just take on people and go, you know, I have to know. Like, I had a call with a lady last night who reached out to me, and I had a 20-minute, half an hour call with her, and I couldn't. I said, look, these are my suggestions to you. This is where I would direct you to. It's out of my expertise. Here's my suggestion. Here's my research on this, that, or whatever. Here's what the research is saying. You know, she was very happy with that, and that was, there was no charge on that or whatever else.
I love the fact that you said that that's not my expertise.
Yeah, that's not, I mean, if it's outside my expertise, because there are certain people that do contact me and I go, because what I deal with is all of the physical components, the lifestyle components. I deal with a certain amount of the psychological, the overthinking, the stress, because I've specialized in that for years, and I've worked with people in high stress environments. I work with shift workers who have circadian misalignment, but there's the whole medical area there that I don't
Yes.
diagnose. I'm not a medical doctor,
Yes.
so I recognize the limitations of my qualifications and my expertise. So
Yes.
and that's why I just say to people, look, we jump on a call together and let me dig into it.
Yeah. And we also have to remember, Tom, and I do feel sorry for the doctors at the moment as well, because they are being bombarded, because HRT and the conversation of perimenopause and menopause has gone through the roof. And, you know, the demand is far outstretching the supply.
Yeah.
In the physical medication and in the doctor's knowledge. But we all have to remember they are general practitioners.
Yes.
General practitioners.
Yeah.
That's why we need to go to specialists in
Yeah.
specific areas, and you're a specialist in a specific area of sleep. So what is your website?
So my website, tomcoleman.ie, www.tomcoleman.ie, and you can, there's a form there you can contact me through, or you can go to my Instagram, which is tomcoleman.ie as well. Keep things nice and simple for people.
Simplify everything.
Do reach out to me. I will always get back to you eventually. Sometimes quickly. I tend to send voice notes to people because
me too. I'm a big voice note person.
I'm a better speaker than I am a typer. So
there we go. Tom, listen, I'm so grateful to you for your time.
Absolutely my pleasure. And look, I again want to give that reassurance to your listeners, to women out there, that like I have helped so many women who have been in a really tough place. And sleep deprivation is so tough, but you can improve. It will improve for certain. I know that because I have testimonials from clients, and I'm grateful people who are getting back sleep, and it makes their life much better. So there is hope. Keep trying, keep digging, keep asking questions. Keep
asking questions.
100%.
Tom, thanks so much for your time. Take it easy.
My pleasure.
Keep
up the great work.
Thanks, Emil.
Thanks, Emil. Take care now.
So, guys, I really hope that you enjoyed that podcast as much as I enjoyed recording it. If this is something that you're interested in, keep an eye out for future podcasts or the previous ones that I've just released. And if you would like to continue your personal or spiritual development journey with me, I would be absolutely delighted to have you, and so would my team. Check out my website, nicolaconnollyburn.com, and go to the personal development section and fill in the forms and join one of the groups, either Soul Steps or Soul Works. We'll see you there. Take it easy. Slán.